Welcome to Stand Up for Doctors. I'm your host, Kim Downey. Thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to welcome Dr. Nicole Perrotte and Claudia Cometa. Thanks for joining us today, Nicole and Claudia.
Thrilled to be here.
I'm happy to have you. So by way of introduction, Dr. Nicole Perrotte is a hospitalist by training, and she's now a wellness speaker, and she supports overwhelmed and burned out physicians to reclaim their time, autonomy, and flexibility. And Claudia Cometa is the founder of Peace Advocacy Group, changing healthcare one heartstorm at a time. She's also a radical remission health coach and workshop instructor, podcast host, keynote speaker, and author. So what you're both doing is very impressive, and I'm glad that you were able to take the time to join me today. So thanks again. And I thought today that we could talk about how you both speak of wishing to be of service to the community, and you champion individuals to recognize their value and how they can move the narrative in medicine. And I was also just thinking that we might speak to the term values also, because some might say it's an overused buzzword, but talking about values and core values seems to be so important. I think we might try to unpack that a little bit. So as we get started, I'd like to ask each of you what you'd most like our audience to know about you. And Nicole, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you so much, Kim. So I'm a board certified internist, and as Kim so nicely mentioned in her introduction, I'm also a wellness speaker and a certified coach as well for burnt out physicians. My goal is for physicians to get back control of their schedules, and so they have time to enjoy the things that they want to enjoy outside of work, hobbies, time with families, taking time to do the things that bring them joy. I essentially got involved in this when I experienced burnout. And this happened just prior to COVID with having a special needs child as well as working rigid schedule. And so that led me to burnout. Thankfully, I was able to find coaching at a time, and that shepherded me into COVID, where the burnout just accelerated for so many of us. But at least that also gave me the stepping stool to delve deeper into coaching. And I found it to be a lifeline for me. And that was when I essentially got involved as a coach and went for certification. So my goal is to support physicians and help them free up their schedule and find the time to do what they want to bring them joy.
That's terrific. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Claudia, would you like to tell us a bit about your story?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just love all of the amazing humans you have on here and that you've met and highlight, Kim. So thank you for being such an amazing human. And I think ultimately what we're all trying to do in our circles of work is make a difference. And you know, I think what that looks like, the details of the work may be different from person to person, but I think we all have a really deep passion for elevating the landscape of healthcare for everyone. So each individual doing their own thing, but not to the expense of the other. And that's why I love all of the people in this space and the work that they're doing. So, you know, I think for a lot of us, just like, you know, Nicole mentioned, we have a life event that happens to us and, you know, arguably for us and kind of outlines our future or informs our future. And that happened to me as well. So I was working as a clinical pharmacist for over a decade and a half and, you know, just plugging along, relatively ignorant, not realizing how ignorant I was of what was happening on the other side of that equation, which was the patient. And I saw that very clearly when my dad got sick and was diagnosed with cancer. And as I was advocating for him, I was the clear choice since nobody else in my family is medically trained. What I saw was a disaster. And I was very disappointed in myself for not realizing what the patient was experiencing. And I found it extremely difficult for the lay person to figure to figure all of that out. And so, as I was in the details, weeds, and, minutia of all of my dad's care, I'm, looking around at the rest of the rooms near him in the hospital thinking, who is helping these people? Like, who is helping them? They have no idea what they don't know. And so it was just a very natural, organic, very heart-centered decision for me to just do for others what I did for him. I didn't even really have the language. I certainly didn't have the entrepreneurial background to figure any of that out, but I figured if I have this deep of a passion for it, I'll just figure it out. And so I stumbled forward kind of imperfectly at the beginning, and ultimately wanted to make a difference for as many people as I could in a position similar to what my dad was in. And so that's what I've been doing for 7 years, since 2017. And ultimately, the goal is to expand and broaden the impact that we have. I think each of us, we do amazing work in the work that we do. And then we start to, understand and realize our own mortality, where none of us are here forever. And so what can we do with the years that we have left? So that's kind of where I'm at now is, continue to work one-on-one, and what else can I do? How can I make a bigger impact? How can I help the larger system see the depths of the patient experience as well as the physician experience? My husband happens to be a physician, so I have seen all of that as a wife and a spouse. And so, yeah, that's my story.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I love that you highlighted the work that we're all doing, so we're all different, right? We have different backgrounds, different stories, but you're right that we're all trying to make a difference. And there's so many people in this space that are, and that's inspiring. And Nicole, I was wondering if you wish, because I know when you and I had a conversation that you also talked about wishing to be of service to the community. So I was wondering how that rings for you.
Oh, yes. And so community could mean so many different things. It could be your coworkers, it could be your neighbors, it could be people at church. We have so many different communities, and these communities, they change as our life change, as we enter different phases. And so when I'm looking at community right now, I'm thinking of my fellow physicians, I'm thinking of my special needs parents, I'm thinking of my working moms, and everyone is singing the same story. On the surface, things may look different, but a lot of people are experiencing the exact same, having the exact same experience. They're trying to put it all together, but it's not necessarily coming together. They're probably using some sticky tape to hold it together. And things are starting to unravel because it's just a lot, and they're having trouble holding it all together. They're overwhelmed, they're stressed, they're not able to move things along as they would like to. And so by working with individuals one-on-one, by speaking in different places, just sharing little tips and little pointers that you could use, quick, simple things that could move the narrative from just being stressed, overwhelmed, from being thinking that this is not going to come together because there are so many moving pieces, that at the end of the day, it's possible. So community is different things and it varies, but at the end of the day, we're all having the same human experience, trying to hold it all together, hopefully with a little bit more than a sticky tape.
For sure, that's great. And one community is the LinkedIn community, and I, see both of your posts, and then we, follow each other, and we all are learning from each other, and that's fantastic. Claudia, would you like to share with the audience a little more about what Peace Advocacy Group is and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So, I had the foresight when I started the company to name it group, because the intention was to have, as you've outlined already here, community, a community of people who are passionate about making change. And so although it was a group of one, just me for many years, I had a larger vision. And so I just plugged through with the name group. But the intention really, and the name Peace came to me very organically, and like it was not even a question. I didn't write down a bunch of names and pick, it wasn't even a thing. It was immediately that was the name. And the intention was really to bring a level of peace to people navigating their health that they really weren't experiencing in any other setting. The amount of fear, anxiety, uncertainty, hopelessness, feeling as if they've been dismissed, they're not heard, they don't know how to have a voice, they don't know how to communicate, they don't feel like they have the space to do that. And so just bringing a level of peace to my individual clients, and also to the people who work alongside me. I think so many people want to work in healthcare and have peace in doing so, and joy and excitement, and, you know, execute on their passion. And so instead of, drones of people leaving the profession, which is also happening, I would like to sort of stop that bleeding and keep the amazing people who are in this field here in some capacity, rather than, seeing them leave. And so Peace Advocacy Group really was created initially to help individuals walk them through the complexities of the medical system and bring other advocates on who would be doing the same. I do train and teach other advocates. And so I do have the ability, depending on where a client is in the country, to potentially have boots on the ground, but I help them virtually anywhere that they live. And we're really kind of expanding too, and starting to make change at the, larger clinic and hospital level. And how do we bring what we know of the patient experience and what we know of the physician experience to executives who couldn't possibly know what we know, because physicians don't feel comfortable, understandably, sharing. I mean, there's going to be a barrier there. There's going to be a level where they just don't cross a boundary. And also with my patients, like, they just don't, there's no way they're going to share with executive level people or even their physicians sometimes, what they share with me, because there's also a feeling of a barrier. And so how can I bring what I know of the experience to them and give them the tools and resources to help both sides? So that's really kind of what we do.
So just one more question to explain it to our listeners. Does it have like two arms, Peace Advocacy Group? One is where you individually actually help patients navigate their own medical care. And then there's another arm where you do like presentations to hospitals on how to support physicians.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Yeah. So the intention there is to not stay too siloed in our work, and not bring that to a stage that could make a bigger impact than we as individuals can, working alongside our clients. So yes, two arms is a perfect way to say it.
And that's fantastic, because that's something that Medicine Forward does. Is we were working on restoring the sacredness of the physician-patient relationship, and that's something that we are all interested in. Nicole, did you want to speak a little more to your coaching business or the other things that you're doing as a wellness speaker?
Sure. Thank you, Kim. And so, as Claudia mentioned, it's really true that a lot of times you find physicians are not willing to speak up and say, oh, this is what's going on. And so they become stressed, they become overwhelmed, and they end up leaving in droves, as opposed to how do we give them strategies to help them see, okay, the system itself is not perfect, but how can I take care of myself right now? How can I, as an individual, do what's best for me within the system? And so that way, find meaningful ways to stay engaged with the work and continue to serve the community. So for a lot of my clients, it ranges either from staying in medicine to looking at alternatives, to looking at a private practice, small little micro practices. Those are some of the options that they've looked at and have explored and gone into as a way of finding meaning to do what they like to do, to serve the patients, be of use that training that they have, but finding a way to do it in a way that doesn't cause them to become stressed and overwhelmed and feel like they're running on a hamster wheel going nowhere. And so that is one way we approach it. Way I approach it is also by doing lectures and speaking engagements and workshops. And so in communities, to organizations, letting them know these are simple strategies that can be taken into consideration. Simple, effective tools that can help move the needle on getting involvement from the physicians, getting engagement, getting them to actually take that time to let others know what's going on. Because it's easy to just keep our head down. That's what we tend to do. We focus on getting the patients taken care of, keep our head down, mind our business, and we're seeing all the madness that's going on, but we'll not say a single word. And so just being aware of that and knowing that there's a safe space to do that, or having a way of presenting it, or just even an opportunity to step up in a role that will give them that voice, that give them that channel to speak to people. And so those are all examples of ways that I've been able to support other physicians as they're trying to navigate this crazy complex system that we're dealing with.
Hmm. I love that. And it's not rocket science, but also if you haven't learned it, you don't know it, right? And nobody can know everything. And I love the way you say that it is simple things that can make a real difference. That's 100% true. And I love that we're all trying to find ways to make medicine more sustainable, because we need doctors, we need doctors to stay in medicine. And that I think it offers a sense of hope for other physicians to hear
Yes.
that there's other people that care and are out there trying to do things that'll move the needle and make things better for all of us physicians and patients alike. So thank you for sharing that. So when I spoke about values, that is quite a coaching buzzword, and I'm not a coach, but you hear about everybody talking about your values and your core values, and some would say, oh, that's just overused buzzword. My values is be a good be a good person, see my patients, things like that. But I also realized that you almost have to pick a few to hone in on that kind of define your priorities, because they all can't have the same level of priority. And maybe you both could speak to defining core value, because some people might say, well, if I don't have my own business, I don't need to do that, right? I'm just being a good person. But it seems like to find, no matter whether you have a side business or a business at all, is that you need to find what your top values are to just prioritize the things that are important in your life. So you can each probably speak to that more eloquently than I. Claudia, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I think this is really important, both personally and professionally. So I will say professionally, I have communicated to my team that integrity is first and foremost on our values list, and it's our guiding light and our North Star. So if we come across a scenario where anybody feels like a request from a client is making us or asking us to make decisions out of integrity, then I have given everybody the green light to say, I'm sorry, this is out of integrity. We won't be able to fulfill that request. And I think that that's huge, because oftentimes as employees of a medical system, we may be doing things that don't feel aligned, and we don't feel like we have, not necessarily with the intention to harm any patient, but we feel like it's not in alignment. What we would like to do, or what we know the patient needs, is something very different. And that's, the case when insurance gets involved. And so there's a lot of players and variables in that. But when we break out and we're doing this work independently and on our own, we can create those values and make them our guiding light. And there's nobody telling us otherwise. We don't have insurance involved in our practice at all. And we don't have large organizations. So if something feels out of integrity, everybody is given the green light to say that. And it's important for me that everybody feels aligned with the work that they're doing, and they feel that they're doing it out of a significant degree of integrity. So I would say from a value standpoint, I make that very clear. And then, secondarily, we value communication. So the transparency of communication, the accessibility of us to be able to communicate with each other and with our clients. So there's never a request or a text or an email that doesn't get answered as immediately as possible. So, it's rare it would be later than an hour, like if one of us is on with a client, unless I'm sleeping, I do protect my sleep. But other than sleep, communication is timely, and we value each other so much, and our clients, that everybody has a sense of urgency in their lives. When they need something, especially our patients, we understand that they're asking it out of a sense of urgency, of needing to know something, a feeling of fear if they don't. So we prioritize timely and prompt communication. So I'm sure Nicole has a lot more to add to that, but that's a few that play into our world.
No, that was a great start, Claudia. No, thank you. That was a great start. And no, we definitely need values. And I think the reason why it's becoming a buzzword is because a lot of people are now appreciating how important it is to use that value as your guidance star, as your North Star, especially in your day-to-day life. Because when you don't, you're doing things and you don't know why you don't feel good about it. And you wonder why you're feeling empty and you wonder why this doesn't make any sense to you on the inside. And it's because you're simply just doing things, maybe because your friend is doing it or because you see everyone else doing it, as opposed to what is truly meaningful to you. And so that is one of the things I always take my clients through. What are your core values? And sometimes they're shocked at what comes up in the top five. I mean, one or two, they may say, oh, for sure, yes, perseverance, integrity, it's there. But then some of the others may not be things that they expected. And so once they're able to realize that, they could say, oh, so this makes sense why I'm no longer enjoying, I don't know, going out partying late at night because, for instance, being well rested, my wellness is important to me now. I want to make sure that I feel good. I get a good night's sleep. I'm taking time to recharge. I'm taking time to be healthy. And when you don't know that you have these things at the core that are important to you, and you're doing everything counter to it, you're constantly in argument with what's going on the outside with your internal being. And so you're in this state of constant chaos. And once you're able to get that aligned, it'll be so much easier to have everything in flow because you're able to easily make decisions. Yes, no, this is not a project that would bring me joy because I don't like writing, for instance. So therefore, working on this grant, for instance, may not be something that would be interesting to me. Thank you for offering, but no, that's not something I'm going to enjoy. So simple things like that, that once you're aware, you're able to say, okay, this is not something that would bring me joy. I need to stop or not accept it. Or, oh my gosh, this lines up with everything I want to do. 100%, I'm behind this. Yes, let's go. In fact, can I be the leader? It makes that huge difference because it gives you fuel in a different way. So it's really important that we tune in and find our values. And those are easy to determine because there are so many different values assessment that are free online. And you're able to get those done, hone into the top five, and you're able to figure out, oh, this is what's important to me. Let me look at what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. Is it lining up or is it just in complete chaos because everything is going in a different direction?
Thank you for explaining that. I really like that. And also I would say that your values can change over time, right? And there's
Yes.
lots of good values, but it's like at a certain time, the ones that are the hugest priority to you. And I could think of myself when I was practicing physical therapy and we switched to EMR and there were some things, I didn't have the time I wanted with the patients or I was, sitting at the computer. And that's how, there's some things where that moral injury can come in where you're expected or you have to do things that you don't want to do or you can't do what you want to do. Now, depending, say I was like the primary breadwinner and or if I had some kids with special needs that had a lot of we needed extra payments for things, a core value might have been something related to providing for my family, somehow like that. And that if that's a top value, then you would do the best you could, but no, at the time, okay, if this is the job I have, right? But if you're in a different phase of your life and your kids are grown or out of the house or you have a supportive spouse and you might say, okay, well, if integrity and honesty and if certain things are my top core value, and I don't have to stay here and it's not in alignment with my top values. I said, so I guess that's why understanding it, and I think you alluded to that, because sometimes you might not know why you're miserable. And that
Yeah.
helps, I think, get to the core. So Claudia, if you wanted to speak to that at all.
Absolutely. I do think that a lot of people in traditional settings don't even feel like they have the space or ability to create values and then follow them because like you said, this is my job. I have to do what my employer says or I'm out and it's my livelihood and I don't have the financial means to not hold this job right now. And so, in the same tone, there are so many opportunities now, both in traditional employment and in expanding beyond that and seeking alternative options, even within healthcare, that you really kind of can identify your values and then actually follow them. And I think that's kind of the message that we're probably all three bringing, is you do have the ability and the right to identify what those values are and then make choices. And that might mean you do identify that your current job is not in alignment at all. And that's a fantastic place to be in, to at least start to identify and acknowledge that, and then find the next best fit that does, come into alignment with that. So super huge. I think even just the shift in allowing yourself the space to create that list and follow it is huge.
That's exactly what I was just going to say, is creating white space in your life, right? So if you're busy and tired and exhausted, you don't probably feel like you have the time or energy to even think about it. So sometimes that's just the first step, is figuring out what that's like for you, whether it's an afternoon off, a day off, a leave of absence, a weekend, something to give yourself time and space, just to be able to come up with that. So yeah, what would you like to say, Nicole?
Yes, no, I like the example Claudia gave, because that is exactly how I felt myself in transition as well. Because one of the things that hospitalists are used to working is under these rigid 12 hours, 7 on, 7 off schedules, very rigid. And it means that in that time that you're on, there is no way that the rest of your life is going to be addressed. Or even if something happened, it would have to wait until you're off. And so it becomes a very dynamic but stressful situation, because of course life has a way of happening and things don't wait for your schedule for when you're off. And so with that flexibility, with that lack of flexibility, I found myself having to dig into my own core values to figure out what made sense. And ultimately, it meant looking for something with more flexibility that was less rigid, that allowed me to do at a time what I needed to do, be able to go to meetings, doctor's appointments, and things like that. Just very simple things that we often would take for granted when we're not in that space where we don't have flexibility, when we don't have those choices. And so over time, now that I have the flexibility, that's no longer on my value list. It has moved on to other things. But you're right, it does change, and it's something that is fluid, but it does affect how we deal with where we are and looking at options, whether they're traditional or non-traditional options. There are tons of options up there. We just have to make a choice, give it a try, and go from there.
That's fantastic. So, Claudia, if you'd like to speak anything to that, or also, do you have any suggestions for patients who wish to support their doctors?
Yeah. What came to mind there with what Nicole mentioned is the, expansive amount of non-traditional options. I often even tell pharmacists who are, in the field, and colleagues of mine, that what if when you looked for a job, you just didn't use the term pharmacist? Like, it's just such a wild, what do you mean? Like, that's my title, but what if there was some opportunity in, healthcare consulting, or in wellness, corporate wellness, or whatever it is, but yeah, maybe it's not titled pharmacist. And what if you just dropped the title for a second? Like, it can be that wild. We can be that anarchist. Like, find something that's not that title. So yeah, lots of options. And I think it requires all of us to think well outside the boxes that I would say, we assume that we've been placed in, but also we have been complacent, in keeping ourselves, and complicit in keeping ourselves there. So with regard to patients, when I work with my clients, it is like very imperative, and I make it really clear to them that there's no antagonism here anywhere. Like, the goal is to get you what you need, and also to get the team that will support you best. And I'm just part of that team. So it's not like I'm coming in and, being the antagonist in the play here. Like, the goal really is to what type of physician do you need, and let's get that team going. And for your physician to be able to do what they need to do in the very small amount of time they have, you also have to come prepared. Like, you've got to come prepared to your appointments. You have to think about this well in advance. What is it exactly that is concerning you? What exactly do you want to know? What questions do you have? Because all of the things that have been going through your mind and the symptoms in your body over the last however many weeks since you last saw your physician, there's no way that person can know that if you don't verbalize it, and if you aren't, in some structured, organized fashion able to present it. So the preparation really is giving your physician all of the tools and resources to do what they know how to do. It really has to be that kind of a partnership. So yeah, I don't know if you wanted me to go more on that, but yeah.
Thanks. Well, I wanted to say I love that, in that when you can consider yourself a patient advocate, where that could be maybe cringeworthy to some because they might think you're coming in there and just, be demanding. So I love that you're sharing with your patients and with the audience that part of it is the critical nature of the patient taking an active role in their own healthcare. And since you have so many different roles, you're the wife of a physician, the daughter of a patient, right? And of course, like we say, we're all patients, so you have that broader perspective, as I do as well. So when you're talking about being an advocate, it's teaching the patient how to advocate for themselves, but also how to be a good patient, right? And then just one more thing I want to speak to is I might have shared on another recent episode that when I just went to pick up my own medication, and the pharmacist now, I feel like they're one of the unsung heroes of healthcare, like the people behind the scenes. I had a pathologist on last week, or someone who works in pathology, and like them in radiology, it's like it feels like they're expected to do more, like all people in healthcare, right? More and more, faster and faster. But nobody who thanks a pharmacist, right? So I just wanted to give a shout out, since your background is as a pharmacist. So just a shout out to all the pharmacists out there doing their best.
Yes, I will second that. They are working very hard under very difficult conditions. So they probably aren't smiling too much in the retail setting, but give them a little grace and a little thank you, and you probably will get a smile out of them.
Exactly. Thank a pharmacist today. So, so Nicole, would you like to share anything else, or any top tips you have for your colleagues, from seasoned physicians to medical students, or even those considering med school?
Sure. And so top tips, I would say making sure that you always prioritize self-care, and knowing that you're taking care of yourself, whether it's adequate sleep, making sure exercise and staying healthy. Those are very, very important pieces. Self-care also includes that white space that we just mentioned, to make sure that you have time to think. When we in medicine, we run, we put everything else on the back burner, but we have to really take that time to create the space to do self-care and just have time to decompress and think and reflect. Another thing is being able to just say no, have good boundaries, saying that this does align with my values, this doesn't align, or I don't have the time. That's another very key tip that I would want others to take on board, because we have a way of always committing. We're altruistic as a group. We want to help, we want to do good. So we say yes and yes and yes to everybody who asks us to join every committee or to help out on every project, because we're thinking, oh, this is good, this is good, this is going to serve my patients. And then in the end, you're burnt out, you're flat out on the ground because you've stretched yourself too thin and you have no time to do any self-care. You don't have any time for your family or anyone else. And so you find yourself angry, frustrated. You're just a shell of yourself because you're disappointed. Nothing has gone the way that you wanted to. So I would say those top two things: making sure take care of yourself and having good boundaries.
Well, thank you. And I think both of those things are so important, and doctors are talking a lot about that. So it might seem simple and basic, but I think some of the problem is when they're the end of med school or residency, that you're taught to suppress those needs, right? If you're doing a surgery, or if you're on a 24-hour shift or something like that. So it's like, what would come naturally, or you'd think would be intuitive, is that's not the priorities, or doesn't seem to be. And then when you become an attending, you don't shift back.
No, you don't. You just keep going, doing what you've always done. Yes.
So this is a word to all those physicians out there, right? Take good care of yourself. That's what I always tell my doctors. I say, take good care of yourself. So, well, thank you. This has been such a terrific conversation. And Claudia, how can our listeners get in touch with you?
Most everything kind of falls into either LinkedIn or my website, which is peaceadvocacygroup.com. So I don't know that there's much else anywhere else. It all kind of gets housed in one of those two places. So yeah.
That's terrific. And how about you, Nicole?
It's the same LinkedIn as well as my website where you can book a consult or get free resources. It's between LinkedIn and my website, theburnoutmd.com.
Okay, well, I will share those links in the notes. And was there any other parting words either of you wish to share before we wind down here?
I just want to say thank you to both of you for the work that you're doing and the amazing circles that you have created and inspired to have an even larger, more expansive voice. My favorite quote is by Ram Dass, and it's "We are all just walking each other home." And I feel like that is very applicable in the work that you both do and in the intersecting circles we all have on LinkedIn. So I'm just very appreciative of the collaboration, and I think, even if it's in a small way, we're all making a difference. And so that feels good.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. And thank you for being such a super connector. And yes, I agree with Claudia. Being part of those circles on LinkedIn has been quite a transformative experience as we get to collaborate and we get to share our experiences and our points and tips and let other people know, have a bigger impact. I also appreciate that as well. And so thank you so much for doing that. I think together we're all able to create a change and have a say in creating that new chapter every day. So definitely something we could all continue to work on as we're working together and collaborating on LinkedIn and elsewhere, like we're doing here right now.
Right, right. Well, thank you. I agree with both of you, and I love it. I think it's beautiful, and together we're, like you said, we're all going to make a difference. So in closing, to move the needle in healthcare, we all need to raise our voices and we all need to care about each other. We already know that doctors need to care about patients. Patients need to care about doctors too. So stand up, doctors, and let's stand up for doctors.